What's up, everybody? This is Noa Dalzell here from the Auerbach Center, where the Celtics spoke to us after a pretty wild consecutive Game 2 collapse. Here to discuss it on the You Got Boston podcast, here to break down what happened in last night's game, which I've now been able to rewatch, as well as kind of what the mood at practice was today. We heard from Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Joe Mazzulla, and I'll be honest, I was not feeling great last night about their chances. I still think it's going to be an uphill battle moving forward here. The odds are against them. I did not at all expect the second game to play out the way the first game did. Like, I'll be the first to admit that. That being said, I think there's a lot of reasons to draw some hope here for this group as they look to turn things around. And so I'll share some of my thoughts. I didn't get out a podcast episode last night after the game because we did a 3-hour Garden Report show, which you can check out on CLNS Media. But I wanted to make sure that I'm still here to answer questions, still here to talk through what happened in this game, and doing that right now. And so feel free to put in any questions in the chat. Feel free to ask anything that you want to ask about kind of my thoughts on this game, about what went wrong, about what the mood in the locker room is right now. And I'll kind of get through all of those. We'll do about 30 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some better, post game coverage to come, and hopefully we have more than just 2 games left here. So as I was leaving TD Garden last night, I was thinking to myself, I think that we're going to be back here for Game 5. I think we're going to be back here for Game 7 at this point, but it's really hard to say because this team has gone pretty ice cold. And so let's start at the top. I rewatched this game, and the things that stuck out to me were a couple. So number one, I felt like more than anything, they just they completely lost confidence in themselves and in one another in the most important stretch of the game. And this is a mental sport, and this is not the first time that this team has done that. And Al Horford said it today when we were talking to him at practice, that it's not the first time that this team has lost games. It's not the first time that they've gotten cold. The shooting woes, they're not typical, but it's also not like, they're 25 of their last 100 threes. They've been 25% from 3 in the series. They went 10 for 40 last night and 15 for 60 in game 1. And while it's an anomaly, it's not like this has never happened. And so I think they know they need to respond with more poise in those moments. And I don't think the answer is start passing up threes. I think the answer is actually to not lose confidence and to slow down and to be poised and to make the right passes and the right reads. What I saw in that fourth quarter where they missed 14 consecutive shots, they didn't make a field goal from the 8.5 minute mark to like 19 seconds when Tatum had that dunk, which is just ridiculous. They only lose by 1 with that level of ice cold in an NBA game. Is a team that just looked frazzled, and they looked, I thought that they were in a tough spot, just kind of recognizing that the same exact thing that happened in game 1 was happening in front of them. I asked Al about that today, and Al said it wasn't necessarily that they were thinking, oh, game 1 is happening again, but they did have this feeling of like, oh, we're squandering a lead, and it did kind of make them tight. So the mental part is, how do you feel? How do you kind of turn around the mental struggles? Like, there's a lot of, it's a whole field, right? And Joe Mazzulla studies these things and reads these things. And these players have been big time players in big moments. They've had their struggles, but also we've seen what Jason Tatum has done with his back against the wall, right? Versus Milwaukee, versus the 76ers, when they're down 3-2, kind of turning around and winning 2 straight games to win both of those series. Even in Miami in 23, they don't win that series, but going down 3-0, they win 3 straight games to put themselves in position to win it in game 7. So I think we've seen it historically that these guys have stepped up big in big moments. And I think that's what gives you confidence. If you feel confident right now, probably a big part of that is the fact that this is not a young group that's never been here before that's expected to kind of crash under pressure. We asked them today, they said they're leaning on their experience, they're leaning on one another. And so the fourth quarter stretch, there's not a diagnosis for. I didn't go back and say they took bad shots. Spacing could have been better. There were a couple shots that could have been better. But generally speaking, it wasn't just the threes. It was the twos. It was layups. It was mid-range shots. It was everything. And there was a lid of the basket. And the craziest part, it wasn't like they were close. These shots were way off. So it's just, at that point, it's a mental struggle. And somebody needs to take control in those moments and get everybody to calm down. And I don't think you saw that in yesterday's game. And I don't know if that's a coaching thing, if that's a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown thing, if that's an Al Horford thing, if that's the bench. I mean, there was a very nervous energy on this bench the entire game. So again, like, that's really what this game came down to. The other things that I didn't like is Mikal Bridges, who was scoreless in the first 3 quarters. He goes off for 14 points in the first half of the fourth quarter. And I played basketball growing up, not nearly the level that anybody here has. So it's completely, I sometimes try to apply my experiences to these guys, but it's so limited. But what I do know is that when you get in a rhythm, in a flow state, and your defender is kind of like playing 50% and you're getting the same kind of coverage over and over again, it starts to feel like it's just you in the basket and nothing else really matters. You're not thinking about the pressure anymore. You're not thinking about the fact that you hadn't made a shot in the first 3 quarters. What we saw defensively on Mikal Bridges is that they did not, I think, up the pressure on him sufficiently, and he willed them back into this game. And so the offense was the story here. It remains the story, 91-90. There's no way to spin it. The Knicks had a very inefficient offensive performance, but they didn't adjust when Mikal Bridges kind of caught fire early on there. And then Josh Hart also saved them a couple times with offensive rebounds. So those two things stuck out from the fourth quarter. Mikal and Josh Hart really won them this game. Jalen Brunson hits some big time plays. He always will. He always has. But that wasn't the difference here. I think you can live with that and you can account for that. And I didn't like Al Horford playing all 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. And that's no knock on Al. I have a lot of faith in him. I think that he's going to step up in game 3. I think you saw him be super poised in this game today. But he was 1 for 6 from the field. He was way off on all of his shots. He had some 2s that were just ill-advised. Like, you're better off taking the 3 even if your shot's not falling than kind of leaning into a tough 2. And then defensively, I thought he looked slower. He missed some defensive rebounds too. So I don't think there's a reason to play Al for 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. And it's always easier. It's always easier in hindsight. Like, it's always easier to say, like, well, now that we know that they lost the game, like, should sub patterns have been completely different? Obviously it's easier to say that after the fact. But Luke Kornet gave them good minutes yesterday. He really did. And so in that sense, it's like, go back to Luke. He played 3 minutes in the fourth quarter. Kristaps played 3 minutes in the fourth quarter. It's hard to assess that because Kristaps is battling some unknown illness still. And the reality of the matter is that Kristaps gave them some good life in the second half, but I don't know that he could have played more, right? But the defensive, the Luke Kornet piece, I would like to give Al a little bit more relief. I honestly thought Luke was better than Al in last night's game. And so I would have liked to see Luke more in general, but even if you didn't think Luke was better than Al, 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, this is a guy that they load manage all year. This is a guy that doesn't play in back-to-backs. He doesn't play heavy minutes. And he's proven, the numbers are totally behind this, he plays better when he has more rest. And obviously everybody does a little, but the numbers are like crazy when you look at Al Horford on a back-to-back, Al Horford on a 1 day of rest, 2 days of rest, 3 days of rest. So I would have liked to see Luke play a little bit more in relief Al, because I do think it cost them down the stretch that he was running on tired legs. The other piece of this, I wanted to see more Peyton Pritchard. And again, when you talk about why they lost this game because they couldn't make shots. But when, that doesn't answer your question, that's like you could just say that we don't have to even discuss this anymore. But as far as tangible changes that they could have made, Pritchard goes 2 for 4 from 3 in the fourth quarter. It's not like a crazy hot shooting stretch, but they went 2 for 11 as a group, right? So he was the only guy in either game that had any sort of touch offensively, honestly. Derek was good in the first half of this one, but everybody else got cold. And at the end of the day, he's not just a microwave scorer off the bench. He's your 6th man of the year. He was a critical part of why they were able to win 61 games this season. He was awarded 6th man for a reason. I think defensively, he's actually been one of their better defenders through this postseason. He has not been a defensive liability. He's navigated screens well. He's been focused. He doesn't get lost off ball. He honestly, he has been a plus defender for them. So I thought that he could have gone longer in the fourth quarter. And when they haven't scored for 4 minutes, put him back in, because he had a little bit of momentum. Yes, and he had 2 air balls, and that was wild. And there were so many air balls in yesterday's game, which is what I'm saying. Like, this was a mental thing. This was not like they just couldn't make a shot. Like, there was something boiling over, because to miss by as much as they missed, like, that's a different story. But from a lineup standpoint, those are the things that I would have liked to see. I'm seeing some stuff on Baylor Shireman, Kada. I think at this point in this, in this season, to throw one of those guys out there that are really inexperienced, that haven't really played, postseason basketball, you could do it, but nothing that I saw during the regular season points me to like Shireman's going to save the day right now. Next year, I think Shireman's going to be in the rotation. I think he's going to play in the playoffs. But right now, I don't think they're going to go there. Maybe, Maybe they do. Maybe they want to mix it up. But again, they've dominated these two games for most of the night. So it's not about like, oh, our lineups are terrible. We have to do everything completely differently. Like they're up by 20 both of these games. It's the question is how can they be more poised? And so there's an element of fatigue, and that's why I want to give the guys that are playing heavy minutes more rest. And shout out to the Knicks because at the end of the fourth quarter, when I rewatched it this morning, Josh Hart did not look tired at all. He was the most energetic player on the floor. And some of that's a testament to his game, but some of that's a testament to like these guys have been playing crazy minutes all year. And Tibbs has been getting keyed for it all season long. In January, when his stars players are playing 46 minutes, but you saw that come into effect yesterday, that they were able to keep going. And he's jumping, and kind of making these massive offensive rebounds, these big plays, drives, transition plays. And so their conditioning came into play. And I'm not saying the Celtics aren't in good conditioning, but at the same time, like Al Horford's 38 years old. He's not supposed to be able to hang with Josh Hart after, a 40-minute night. So I would have liked to see a little bit more relief for him. But I also think there, as an element of like, it's not necessarily call timeout during those moments because there needs to be a messenger that resonates. But I've never, I didn't see at any point them recollect themselves from the moment that they started blowing the lead with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter to the end of the game. It just looked like it was continuing to boil over and boil over and boil over. And so what makes me encouraged, because I know that's the theme of this podcast, and I'm not going to do the four encouraging things right now because it feels a little bit of a shtick to do it after kind of the situation that they find themselves in. But I still have a really positive outlook on this group in general, regardless of what happens in this series. What makes me encouraged is that they actually dominated both of these games. They dominated the margins. They were up by 20 in both games. So anytime you lose a lead, it's also how did you build that lead? And so what happened was that they were the inferior fourth quarter team that couldn't execute and couldn't stay poised. And it's pretty shocking to watch from an outsider's point of view because these are champions, right? These aren't like second-year NBA players. This is not the 2017 Celtics. Like these are champion players that you would think would have a level of poise that they just haven't had in game one and game two. And they're not going to necessarily say it, but I think that the ghosts of game one were haunting them throughout game two. The building went quiet when it was still a 15-point game. I watched the Knicks bench. The Knicks were like, we're about to do this again. The Celtics bench was like, oh my God, are we about to blow it again? So this was mental. And there are little execution things you can do differently. Should they be fouling Mitchell Robinson? I am not a big believer in that game plan. I didn't think that it made a lot of sense. Was the pace right? They had some live ball turnovers that were terrible, right? Like the late game third quarter minutes, like all of that. There's a lot of things that you can change that are tactical, but above all of that, when I rewatched this, I think it was more of a mental thing than anything. So I'm going to try to answer some of these questions. I do agree with this, Kevin. I think sometimes when you see like, okay, we don't have the poise right now. We're not able to kind of get our heads out of this cloud that we're in. At that point, you want them to just run something easy, get an easy look. I think that, obviously they have a playbook, but I don't think you saw that yesterday. So is that a coaching thing? I think you can blame the coaches. I think you can blame the players that are on the floor, whatever it is. But I agree. I think when I rewatched this one, it's like, yes, they got open looks. And yes, that's why they lost this game. But they never were able to get into a rhythm where it's like even the open looks that they got were a little bit random. And and again, you can critique it, but also it's how they won a championship last year, playing this kind of random offense where you mismatch hunt and everything. And sometimes it's going to hurt you. And in this series, and when it's mattered most, they haven't been able to deliver. Before the series, Kristaps was talking about the margins and the importance of winning the margins. And he said that ultimately, like, they don't want to be bailed out by the greatness of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They want to do things the right way. I think the reality is in this series is that nobody has bailed them out. They haven't been bailed out by the greatness of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown because they haven't been great. Tatum's really struggled. He took full ownership of that at practice today. He said, I have to be better. I will be better. I'm taking full ownership. He took ownership for the last play that he made the wrong read. He dribbled into traffic. So those guys are not playing like themselves right now. I don't know if there's an injury component. I don't know if Jaylen's knee is limiting him. We all kind of forgot about Tatum's wrist, and I don't want to make excuses for him, but it's still something that's, a part of the reality of what he's dealing with. So again, I don't know if that's what's happening, if it's fatigue, if it's something else that, someone here asked about, is the trade rumors affecting them? I don't think so. I don't think that anything that developed between these two rounds, the Shams report and all of that, I don't think that it was anything really new for this group. I think they know that there's going to be off-season change regardless of what happens. So I didn't really see that. Is Kristaps Porzingis being impacted by the fact that I think the fans have kind of put a lot of pressure on him through his illness here? Maybe a little. He seemed really down yesterday. And again, we don't know exactly what he's been dealing with. Yeah, I feel for him because from a health standpoint, like, you never want anybody to not be healthy. But I don't think this is a trade thing. I think there's pressure because you want to win so badly. You want to avoid defeat so badly, and you don't want to blow a lead. Like, playing ahead is tough, and you could see that they're playing with, like, kind of looking over their shoulder, like the Knicks are making this run more so than like let's keep our foot on the gas. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Tatum throws a pass to Brown and it kind of slips through Brown's hands. That was going to put them up by 22 late in the third. They had so many opportunities to put this game away. It is ridiculous. Like, when I rewatch this game, anybody in that locker room could sit to themselves and say, I lost the team this game, and they would be right. Because Derek White had opportunities to win this game. Al Horford had opportunities to win this game. Pritchard even, if he doesn't airball that top, like, there were dagger opportunities, and they missed all of them. And so I'm sure Jason Tatum feels terrible about the last play. I'm sure Jaylen Brown feels terrible that he wasn't better in the second, in the fourth quarter and in the second half. Al Horford said today that he has to be better. He missed some clean looks. But this was a game that saw like the blame could really be put on anybody. So that's kind of the reality here. Why I'm feeling positive, because I'm seeing some people, they want some positivity, and I'll give you some positivity. I can't promise you that everything's going to be all right. The odds are in their are against them, right? Like, they're down 0-2. It's a tough spot to be. That being said, I saw the stat today. I'm going to read you guys this exact stat, actually, so that I don't botch it. And I've learned if I pull anything up on my computer during these live streams, everything crashes. So at least one team has recovered from an 0-2 series deficit in 8 of the last 9 postseasons. The Pacers did it last year. In 2023, the Warriors did it. 22, the Mavericks did it. 21, the Clippers did it twice. The Bucks did it twice. Drew Holiday was on that team, won a championship. So I'm sure he's telling them a little bit about kind of what that experience of coming back from a 2-0 deficit again. So it happens all the time. And this team has been better on the road than at home this season. The exact record here, let's look. This season, they're 33-8 on the road, and they're 28-13 at home. So they come back from being down 2-0. It happens every year. Somebody does it. And they're better on the road than at home. So that's the thing. Like, I really do think that they have the opportunity here to turn things around, that it happens, and they're looking forward to going on the road. I think there's actually a lot of pressure with playing with a lead at home, and you can kind of sense the nervousness a little bit. The Knicks have been relishing playing in TD Garden. The Knicks have been better on the road this year too. So the road thing, the fact that they were one of the best road teams in NBA history, they fell one road win short of tying the Warriors record. Those are the things that you have to kind of like, you have to kind of lean on in this moment. The other thing is the experience. And that's what they're leaning on. They're leaning on one another. I don't think this is a fractured group. I don't think this is a group where there are locker room issues. There's a lack of buy-in, all of that. I really don't think so. And so sometimes when you see these collapses, like, you start to say, like, is the locker room splintering? Are guys losing faith in one another? Zero reporting, zero indication that that's what's going on. This is the same team that won a championship last year and kind of coasted to a championship. It's the exact same team. They're bought into one another. They're bought into playing the right way. And I think they actually overcorrected after game 1. And so that's kind of the reality here. And so those are the things that give me confidence. Their experience, the fact that they've been here before, they've had their backs against the wall. They've been down 3-2 versus the Bucks and versus the 76ers and come back and won both of those series. Even being down 3-0, Miami is a tough situation because they didn't ultimately win that series, but there's a lot to feel optimistic about, right? And so, again, I'm not going to say everything's going to be okay because you don't know. We don't have all the information right now. And the Knicks are feeling great. And the thing that gives me the most concern is that the Knicks, I have a lot of faith in that group. I think they're clutch, they're winners, all of that. So that gives me a little bit of pause. Like, they're going to have to concede here the same way that one team goes ahead and takes these wins, another team has to actually concede them. And I think in both of these games, it was a combination of the Celtics choking and the Knicks going out there and grabbing it. And Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart were the MVPs last night. They really were. Like, hats off to them. They were awesome. But that's kind of what as I'm kind of working through all of this, I think the Celtics team is poised to be that team that every postseason one team comes back from being down 2-0 because they really did dominate both these. And it feels weird to say that because they dominated these first 2 games and they still lose. And that's because the Knicks really just made more plays down the stretch. Like, that's really all this was. And so credit to them. and they're going to have to do it 2 more times, right? People that predicted a Celtics sweep, like they have to lose 2 more games here. Game 3 now becomes like a literal must win. And I felt the game 2 was a must win. I'll be honest. I felt like whoever was going to win this game 2 was going to win the series. But game 3 is the one that like you can't go down 3-0, right? Nobody's ever come back in history, all of that. So quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks. Feel free to continue putting questions in the chat, and I want to get to some more questions when we come back. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your PrizePicks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The basketball playoffs are here and the action is heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite spots. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, so I'm continuing to look through here. I don't think there's a lot of reasons to feel optimistic. I understand that. Like, I think that ultimately, like, the odds are against them. I actually saw the betting odds still lean Celtics, which is wild to me. I don't really get. I don't sports bet. I don't really get the whole market. But I remember in the Miami series, still like the markets were not willing to give up on the Celtics. I always thought the series was going to be tough. Like, I always thought it was going to be 5 battles. I just thought the Celtics were going to execute a lot better in the clutch. So that was kind of the big thing that threw me off. I'll just say I don't think we need to talk about this right now. I talked a little bit about it on our post-game show on CLNS Media last night, but this idea that the Celtics won a championship last year because everybody was hurt, I don't subscribe to it, because ultimately you could asterisk like every other championship with that mindset. You could say the Bucks played only hurt teams. You could say the Lakers were in the bubble. Like, you could always do that thing. Their 2019 Raptors played a hurt Warriors team. Like, injuries are part of the game. You know, guys are hurt. Sometimes guys step up and so, thrive when players are injured. Celtics didn't have Porzingis for the entire playoff run last year, but everybody else was good to go. So I just think you could start asterisking or saying this was a fraudulent championship team. I just don't buy into it, because you could do it for almost every team. Like, maybe once in a while, like 2016 Cavs, like everybody will give them credit, but outside of that, I think people just are willing to diminish any championship. So you just can't do it, in my opinion. Question here about Joe. Do you think Joe needs to do things better to manage a lead? Timeouts, rotations. I'll put more of the blame on the players, but I think definitely Joe has to shoulder some of the blame here. The rotations, I would have liked to see more relief for Al in the fourth quarter. I would have liked to see more Peyton Pritchard down the stretch. I would have liked to see Tatum more involved from the jump. I like that Jaylen Brown was being aggressive, but I think Tatum was not in any sort of rhythm. He was like 1 for 7 to start. And I think sometimes you kind of have to force the issue with him early on, because you're going to need him down the stretch. You're going to need the ball in his hands. He's going to have to kind of figure out. Sometimes it takes him a while to kind of get into the flow of games. So whose fault is that? Is that Tatum's fault? Is that Joe's fault? Probably a mix. But I do think there are things that Joe could have done better in this game. And it felt like there was a vacuum for leadership a little bit in this one. Like, you wanted them to combat like this momentum that the Knicks were on, and they were never able to regather. And so who do you blame? Do you blame Tatum and Brown for being the team stars? Do you blame Al for being the longest tenured vet? Do you blame Joe for being the head coach? Should he say something different? Like, I don't know. I'm not in the room, so it's hard to gauge. But certainly there was a little bit of a leadership vacuum, it looked like, from where we sit in that moment. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe actually behind closed doors, like, that's not really what happened, and they were saying and doing the right things, and it just wasn't translating onto the floor. But rotations-wise, certainly, I didn't like how Al kind of looked down the stretch here in the moment. So continuing to look. Yeah, and this is the thing, like, when you talk about whether this team has to kind of rehaul the way they're playing, they really don't, because they did build these 20-point leads. The question is, it's the late game execution and it's the poise. And poise is such a dumb word sometimes to say, because it's like, how do you teach it? How do you evaluate it? You can just see it when you can feel it when you're in the building. And they just didn't have it in the series, both of these games. And they had it last year throughout the entire postseason. I go to Indiana. I go to the Indiana Pacers series, which I think about all the time now because they almost lost like nearly every one of those games, right? Game 1, they're down by 3. The Pacers have the ball. Jaylen Brown makes 2 of the biggest plays of his career. We've rehashed it a million times. I'm sure everybody remembers it, but he deflects the ball off of Pascal Siakam in an inbounds play, and then he hits a corner 3, despite not being a great three-point shooter, right? Like that's not necessarily his thing, but he hits the big shot when it matters there. They go on to win the series, right? They didn't dominate the Pacers. They didn't play significantly different style of basketball than they're playing right now, but they made the plays down the stretch. So there's a little bit of luck. There's a little bit the ball has to bounce their way. There's a little bit of you have to be the more poised team than the opposing team. I thought the Pacers made some major blunders last year in the postseason that you're seeing them come back this year, and they've been so much better in the clutch. This Knicks team has made big time plays. So the challenge is now that the margins are slimmer. You know, you don't have the ability to just choke away a game because now you literally need to win 4 out of your next 5 to survive. But I think as you look at the overall game plan, it's not like they have no answer to the Knicks. They can't control them. Like it's they just have to be better down the stretch. And again, I going into the series, like this was, I guess I didn't really express this as a major concern, but a big advantage that this Knicks team has is that they have winning basketball players. Not every team does, but I really view that trio, the Villanova trio of Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and Jalen Brunson as 3 winning basketball players. And they haven't been perfect in the series. They've had their own moments of individual struggle, but they make winning plays down the stretch. So that's the reality that you kind of have to fight right now, is that you're playing another team that's going to make the big plays. So you have to make even more plays. Is Drew good? I didn't hear anything about Drew. I think that he is fighting through this hamstring strain, but he's generally been pretty good. I think he was better in game 1 and then in game 2. He had some moments defensively where he seemed a little bit slower, a little bit kind of obviously fouled Jalen Brunson in that key possession late game, which I'm not going to put the blame on him on that because I think there were a lot of bigger moments that were more in their hands than that one. But yeah, mental block. That's kind of what the reality is here. I don't think they let up after the 20-point lead because nobody's like, oh, now we're up 20. We're not going to blow this one because they just saw it in game 1, how it goes down, right? How it plays out. So in no world are they going to look at, are they going to look at a 20-point lead right now and take it for granted? I also think they just played enough basketball and they've been in the NBA long enough to know this is kind of how it goes, right? 20-point leads get blown all the time. The Cavs just blew a 17-point lead the other night. Pritchard told us yesterday to shoot around. Like, we're studying that game. We're studying late game collapse. Josh Hart's going to be crashing. And then Josh Hart goes and is crashing, right? So, like, I don't think they're letting up. I think, if anything, they're tensing up because they know the lead is so dangerous, in a sense. So, will they build a 20-point lead again? I don't know. But if they do, I think they're probably going to get nervous again. And so it's combating that more than combating complacency. Because offensively, you just saw them tense up. And it's, again, if you look at just the play-by-play, it looks like they missed a bunch of shots, but it's how they missed them. They missed them badly. Like it was very out of character in that sense. So, okay, I'm just reading through some of these. A lot of people not happy with Joe. I think it's natural. I think it's natural to kind of complain about the coach when things aren't going right. Certainly, I had tangible grievances with the coaching yesterday from mostly rotational, but also the fact that in that fourth quarter, I felt like there was not a regrouping that happened. And sometimes it's a timeout, sometimes it's a leader on the floor. But if it's not happening, I think you need to intervene. I didn't necessarily care that much about the last timeout. I probably would have rather he called it because it was clear that play was going nowhere with a couple seconds to spare. So. But it's also tough because I think generally speaking, you want to trust your star player to make a play. And he just had one play earlier, but it was well defended by New York. So hats off to them. I talked a little bit about this, but I don't think this is the moment to give a deep bench guy an opportunity. But maybe it is, right? Like I'm not going to act like I know the answer definitively. I don't think anybody knows, or else they would just do it. But I think you're going to go with the guys you have, but you're probably going to lean on Pritchard and Luke a little bit more. I don't think Sam's going to be available for game 3. He seems pretty hobbled. He was just doing some form shooting and shoot around yesterday. I wasn't able to see him today. But I have a feeling they're going to stick with their more limited rotation. And again, Kristaps is still a little bit of a question mark here. So we'll see about that. How can Jason Tatum be better? Honestly, I felt like he needs to just actually attack the basket and just get to the line, like not be afraid of the contact and just draw it. What he did so masterfully versus Orlando is he relished the physical contact and he tried to get to the line and it worked and he shot his free throws really well. So I think that's one way that maybe he can kind of see the ball get going. I thought defensively he was really good in this game, and from a rebounding standpoint, he was really good in this game. And I didn't feel that way after game one. I thought he was much better defensively after game two than after game one. But he has to kind of get out of his own head a little bit because, and I know people are probably going to disagree with this, but he passed up some open threes earlier on, and it got in his own head. It made things more difficult for him offensively, and he was not good offensively in this game. I think he finished just 5 of 19. But beyond just the missed threes, it was the twos that were more painful to watch, honestly. So I want to see him attack the basket. I want to see him get to the line, but he has to also stick with his game. And he, as much as it bothered, to much to the dislike of fans, he hits these threes, and even when he doesn't, it's part of his game. It's part of how defenses have to defend him. So I think he has to get back to kind of to his own game. And he said it today, like, we're going to get back to our identity. We're not going to waver because the shots aren't falling. And I also want to see him get going earlier on. Like, I think at this point, he has to get going for them to win these games. So you have to lean into that. You're not going to be able to just say, like, okay, other guys have the hot hand right now, so he can kind of fade into the background. He needs to get going. Last night in the first half, it was Jaylen Brown and Derek White, and they kind of just lived with the fact that Tatum only had 2 points at the half. They still had the lead. I think right now you have to kind of force the issue with him a little bit. Okay, continuing to scroll down here. Vacuum of leadership. Yeah, I mean, it certainly seemed that way. Like, I think in those moments that there was a little bit of a vacuum of leadership. I don't think anybody's disinterested. They really want this. Like, they really, like, trust me, I'm around these guys every day. They really want to go back to back. They don't want to lose in the second round. They've known all year that no team has lost in the second round. No team has gotten out of the second round that's won a championship since the 2019 Warriors. Like, it has been almost a decade now of this trend. And so, like, they are aware of it, and maybe that's haunting them a little bit, the reality that this keeps happening to teams. Like, I don't know. But I don't think it's a lack of interest. I haven't seen anything that's pointed to that. I'll echo this. Teams blow 20-point leads all the time. It's actually scary to be up by 20 in the playoffs. If you're turning on a game and you're watching it and you're seeing that game's up by 20, let me put something else on. Keep the game on because chances are you're about to watch a comeback. That's kind of how this goes. What's my excuse if the sweep comes? I don't think there's any excuse. I mean, I'm giving the Knicks all the credit here for the plays that they've made, for the greatness of their stars, especially the role guys. I think OG Anunoby, big part of game one, Mikal and Josh Hart game two. Like, series are won because of everybody, right? It's not just star players. If it was, it's not like Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns have been perfect in the series. It's been everybody else. And so what I'll say, though, is that people are going to say, negate the 2014 championship. They're going to say whatever. Like, I think you look at everything as one series at a time. And there's been moments where guys have been great. Giannis, nothing will ever take away from what he did in 2021. And then we've seen him not be able to get out of the first round since then. So it's the life cycle of sports. Like, what makes sports so unpredictable and exciting is that you don't know, just because you win one year doesn't mean that it's going to carry over. Just because a group clicks and a dynamic works one year doesn't mean that it's going to work the year after. The vibe today at Auerbach Center was cool, calm, and collected. It was inspired. It inspired me, honestly. I was really impressed by how everybody handled their press conferences. I just think there's a lot of emotions. Obviously, everybody's frustrated with how these last 2 games have gone. But they had a night to sleep on it. It obviously stung. And I saw a lot of leadership in the way that Tatum, Brown, and Mazzulla were talking. You could watch those press conferences entirely on the YouTube channel, CLNS Media. I felt last night a little bit more discouraged in their ability to kind of turn this around. But honestly, after rewatching the game and hearing them talk, I feel more encouraged. I can't say, like, I think they're for sure going to turn this around because definitely the odds are still against them. But I think Al Horford in particular brought a level of calm and poise. And Jason Tatum said it. He said, I'm going to be better. And he usually is, right? Obviously, the 2022 finals were a tough series for him. But most of the time when he starts a series poorly, he turns it around. And we've seen him do that time and again. And I believe in Tatum. I believe that he's going to be able to do so. They are guys that play their best when their backs are against the wall. So we'll see kind of how it goes. Is Tatum hurting? I don't know. He said in the Orlando series that the people around him know how serious this wrist injury is. I do think it's limiting him. He obviously has a ton of wrap and bandage around him. I don't know, is it why he's afraid to go to the basket? It seems like he's more afraid to go to the basket against this Knicks team than the Magic team, which is a little bit confusing to me because I don't think defensively the personnel is much better. But I like what New York's done schematically, but yeah, it's challenging to watch. So we'll see. I'm going to do a couple more questions here, and then I'm going to wrap up. But I did do a full post-game, full practice podcast with Bobby Manning that'll be on CLNS Media as well, so you can watch that too. I do feel badly for Kristaps Porzingis. I'm seeing some comments here. He looked really kind of demoralized about how things played out for him. You know, the fact that his health is kind of failing him in this moment. He just wants to be available. He's healthy and he doesn't have any injuries, right? And he just wants to be out there. And you can tell that he's playing with a very limited motor. So I feel for him. I feel for the people around him. You can tell that they're trying to lift him up. He said the organization's had his back. That probably the fans have his back. I think that's true for some fans, not for everybody. But health stuff just sucks. And the fact that health is, yeah, I think that, you know, you just hope that everything's okay with him beyond just the basketball, right? And I think he does know the pressure of him being traded is increasing, that his trade value is decreasing, all of that. Like, they're human beings at the end of the day. But I thought he gave them what he could in yesterday's game. Like, you know, he wasn't perfect. I thought in the first half, those 5 minutes were pretty brutal, actually. He couldn't get a rebound. Second half, he made a couple big plays that if they win yesterday's game, we're all giving him a lot of credit for how he battled illness and gave them some valuable contributions. So it sucks. It sucks. It seems like he's just had bad luck. And it feels like sometimes guys, you know, some guys just don't have good luck when it comes to dependability and availability. And I don't know what it is. I agree with this. I think that Tatum was passing up threes that he would normally take. And lack of question here from Joshua. We mentioned a lack of leadership during those moments. And again, I'm saying that from the outside. I don't like being a reporter that's like, there's no leadership on this team. Somebody needs to step up, because I don't know that that's true, right? I have nobody's telling me behind closed doors like there's a lot of leadership vacuum. It just felt like during that run, they needed to regather, and it needed to be somebody. Like, it could be Xavier Tillman for all I care, and you didn't see them be able to do that. So whether it was nobody tried to pull the group together, or it was they tried and it just didn't get through. Who's going to offer that leadership? I think you're going to see it from Al Horford, who has been kind of the rock for this team over much of the past decade. I think you're going to have to see from Tatum and Brown, though, in their play beyond anything else. There are guys that, you know, Jalen's become more vocal. Tatum's more of a lead by example kind of player, but still, most important is their play on the court. And they're going to need to play calm and collected, and that's going to spread to everybody else. I guarantee that that'll spread everybody else if they can kind of be a little bit more calm in those moments too. Gonna wrap up here in a moment. I do appreciate you all for checking in, joining the show. I wish they had played Luke more. I agree. Al Horford praised his performance today. I agree. Al Horford should not have played 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. That was, yeah, the Mitchell Robinson thing. You should check in. Bobby Manning and I did a show, as I mentioned. He is not happy about the Robinson fouls. It didn't really make sense. It really didn't make sense to me. Like, especially they started doing it before they were even in the bonus. I think it disrupted the game. It might be a moment of kind of leaning in on the analytics a little bit too hard. So, okay, there's a lot more questions here. I'm going to try to just kind of rapid fire. Yeah, valid. I think when the shots aren't falling, like, you want to see them go to some set action, and this era of Celtics players have not done that. Like, you can't deny that. But again, the looks they got were so good that it's hard to blame, like, the actions. Knicks have been clutch. Tatum should probably take more threes. Like, I'm agreeing with a lot of you guys here. I don't think this is like panic for the most part. I don't agree with like the whole like fire Joe, these guys are frauds things, because if that's going to be your mindset after 2 games, like, it's always going to be superbly difficult. Like, it's always going to be, it's just really hard to win consecutive years, and coaches get fired all the time. Joe probably will get fired at some point. I don't think it'll be this summer, but everybody gets fired, right? That's just the nature of things. So listen, I don't have all the answers. It's not the easiest kind of stretch here to understand, because they have played really well until they haven't. I give a lot of credit to New York. I give a lot of credit to the role guys, like I said. I thought the Celtics were going to take the series in 5. I thought they were going to be 5 games to the wire, like the way the Indiana series were. And I've been surprised at their lack of execution down the stretch. I also thought that, the shots were going to turn around in game 2, and they didn't. So when is Jaylen Brown going to turn it around? I don't know if this is, again, and also so many guys are dealing with lingering things, but I don't want to just say, oh, Jaylen has the knee, Drew has the hamstring, Tatum has the wrist, because we don't know how much of a factor these things are. Nobody's healthy right now. That's not excuses. So, okay, I'm going to wrap up here. I have another podcast in like 50 minutes. You can check on CLNS Media, everything else. I'll be on the Kevin O'Connor show later as well, discussing this with Jack Simone. Please subscribe to the You Got Boston podcast. I'll be going live after game 3. Maybe I'll be going live before game 3 at some point, because I know people want to talk. People want to kind of break down what's going on here. I appreciate you all for the questions, the comments. I have my writing on CelticsBlog.com, which you can read about the sirens that went off after game 2. It was the most fitting scene that as this team is kind of collapsing here and everything's going wrong. The building goes up with sirens and there's an evacuation and we don't even hear from Tatum until today. So it was crazy. It was all just kind of a perfectly fitting metaphor for how the game played out. Again, I have confidence the team's going to bounce back. I have confidence in the guys on the team. This is not a situation of like everything's falling apart and all of that, and everybody's turning on one another. It's not happening here. I'd be very surprised if there's a post-mortem written by anybody that says this group turned on one another, because I don't think that's what we're seeing right now. But they need to make big plays down the stretch. They haven't done it in the first two games. It doesn't mean that they can't do it moving forward. I'm sure you guys all hope, except for the Knicks fans that are here, which we do appreciate you guys being here. I actually love the Knicks. Like, maybe this is not what Celtics fans want to hear right now, but sometimes you play teams and you don't really like their style of play. I don't like, I had some things about Jalen Brunson's like foul baiting that I didn't love going into the series, but overall, this is a really fun Knicks team to watch. I know it's hard to root for them right now, but the Knicks fans that are a lot of Knicks fans have been kind of in my DMs being like, like you hated us, and I was like, I actually always liked the Knicks. So we'll see. We'll see how kind of things shape up here. And again, yeah, like this comment here captures it. They've been in worse holes. This is a team that's had their back against the wall, and that's the biggest thing that we can lean on at this moment. So more coverage coming up. CLNS Media, subscribe. You Got Boston Podcast, subscribe. And thanks again. Have a good one, everybody.